The kind of place that stopped serving food an hour ago, but still pretends to welcome guests, if they look like they belong. The carpet was too thick, the walls too silent, the light dim in a way that was meant to feel expensive, but mostly just made everyone look tired. Jungkook was at the far end of the bar, hoodie half off his shoulder, hair damp like he'd only just come down. RM sat beside him, posture relaxed, fingers circling the rim of his glass. Jin leaned forward on both elbows, talking low, laughing once. Yoongi was closest to the corner, eyes scanning, not saying much. No one else was loud. It wasn't that kind of space. A couple in the corner murmured over champagne. A man 2 stools away hadn't looked up from his tablet in 20 minutes. No music played, just the soft rattle of glassware and the slow-motion clink of ice. Then, movement. A shift at the far doorway. A staff member stepped in. Polite uniform, not management, not that kind of authority, but enough. Clipboard clutched like a shield, eyes already apologizing before the mouth even opened. He didn't walk all the way in, just enough to be seen. He didn't speak loudly, just enough to reach the table. "I'm so sorry," he began, voice flat with courtesy. "But the bar is winding down for the night. We're kindly asking guests to head back to their rooms." No insult, no demand. Just that practiced hospitality voice that pretends a rule is universal. But it landed wrong. Because the others in the bar didn't move, didn't even blink. Not the couple, not the man with the tablet, just the staffer, waiting. Jungkook looked up first, not with surprise, just confusion. His brows barely shifted. Jin turned his head toward the staff member, then back to the others, like he wasn't sure they'd heard right. RM didn't react, but he did stop circling his glass. Yoongi raised one eyebrow, very slightly. The man with the tablet did not get asked to leave. The couple was still on their second bottle, but it was them who had been asked, quietly, clearly. And the room, now fully still, had noticed. The distance between him and the group wasn't physical, it was structural. His badge gave him the right to ask. Their presence made the question absurd. Jin smiled politely, almost instinctively, like smoothing the edge of a table that wasn't sharp. "Oh, of course," he said, but didn't move. RM's hand was still on the glass. He hadn't looked at the staffer at all. His gaze was elsewhere, across the bar, to the couple still murmuring over champagne, untouched by curfews. Jungkook tilted his head, almost amused. Not mocking, just that half-second flicker of disbelief, like he couldn't tell if it was real or part of some misunderstanding. Yoongi's expression didn't change at all. The staffer shifted his clipboard. That small nervous motion gave it away. This wasn't routine. This was a request someone else had told him to deliver. A new sound entered the space, not loud, just out of place. A soft clink, too sharp. The man with the tablet had paused his scrolling. He was listening now, not openly, but enough. The couple hadn't moved, but the woman's eyes had. She looked over her shoulder, not with recognition, with curiosity. That quiet. Why them? Jin stood. Not quickly, not dramatically, just stood, like someone trained in diplomacy. He adjusted the cuff of his jacket. "I think we're fine to finish these, yeah?" He didn't ask it like a question. He asked it like an answer. The staffer opened his mouth, then closed it. His eyes flicked toward the bar itself, toward a second figure now emerging from the hallway. Another staffer. Not in uniform this time. Manager. That was the escalation. The second man walked in with a smile already plastered on. Corporate, apologetic, empty. He wasn't angry. He was here to resolve. "Gentlemen," he said softly, "we do apologize for the interruption. We're just beginning our nightly closure protocol." "Of course. You're welcome to take your drinks up to the suite floor." It sounded generous. It wasn't. Yoongi finally looked straight at him. "We're being asked to leave?" Flat. No tone. Just clarification. "No, not at all," the manager said, hands up, still smiling. "Just inviting you to continue elsewhere." Now the couple was definitely listening. The woman leaned closer to her partner. He nodded slowly. Their bottle wasn't finished. No one had invited them anywhere. The imbalance cracked. RM exhaled once. Not loud, but it felt like a decision was being made in the space between breaths. And in that breathless space, something shifted. The roles in the room, the temperature, the understanding. They weren't being kicked out, but they weren't being kept either. And everyone was watching now. Not literally, but in attention. The moment the manager repeated himself, softer now, more apologetic, but with the same undertone. The others in the bar recalibrated. Conversation stuttered. A glass was set down too carefully. The couple stopped speaking mid-sentence. The request wasn't loud, but it echoed. RM turned, finally meeting the manager's eyes. No smile, no confusion. Just the kind of stare that asked, "Do you know what you're doing?" The manager hesitated. He wasn't new, but he wasn't built for this kind of correction. He adjusted his jacket sleeve, then gestured lightly to the hallway. "Of course, you're more than welcome to continue in the executive lounge." Jin tilted his head. "So, we can't be here." That stopped everything. It wasn't a protest. It wasn't anger. It was just the words. The woman in the corner lowered her glass. The man with the tablet now stared straight ahead, screen untouched. Someone further down the bar mouthed, "What's going on?" Yoongi spoke next, low and firm. "You asked us first." Not a question, a statement. Because the couple hadn't been approached. The solo guest hadn't been tapped. Only them. The staffer with the clipboard reappeared near the hallway. Not closer, just present. Back up, but too late. Jungkook still hadn't moved, but his jaw was locked now. "I think we understand," RM said finally. His tone wasn't cold. It was something worse, neutral. He looked at no one. He looked at everyone. They began to rise, one by one. Not rushed, not shamed, just leaving. And in that movement, the bar shifted entirely. Not a single phone came out, but every face turned, some subtly, some not. Heads dipped, eyes followed. The manager opened his mouth again. To say what, no one knew, but closed it when Jin walked past without looking at him. Yoongi didn't wait. Jungkook adjusted his hoodie. RM was last, his glass still full. And as they moved toward the exit, it became obvious what had happened. They weren't being escorted out. They were being reminded. This space isn't yours, not fully. Not even here. Not even now. And everyone had just seen it. Across the carpet, the silence stretched. No music, no footsteps loud enough to distract. Just the weighted presence of 4 men crossing the room, one after another, while no one quite knew how to exist around them. The bar didn't react with noise. It reacted with absence. Conversations paused, glasses held midair, movement shortened. Everyone suddenly trying to shrink, not out of respect, but out of discomfort. Not because something wrong had happened, because something had shifted, and no one knew how to name it. The manager stepped back slightly, instinctively making space, though he'd been the one to initiate it all. His mouth curled into a smile that didn't belong to him anymore. A smile that said this was nothing, even as the weight of it pressed down on the room. Jungkook passed first, hoodie back on, eyes low. Jin followed with a slight nod, not to anyone, just the room. Yoongi didn't look at anyone at all. And RM turned his head, just for a second, to the couple, the ones who weren't asked to leave, the ones who still had full glasses and untouched plates. The woman flinched, not visibly, just in posture. She pulled her coat tighter, not out of cold. The man beside her opened his mouth, then closed it, looked down at his drink like it would explain something. Behind the bar, the bartender froze in the act of cleaning a glass. The cloth hung in place, water streaking unevenly down the rim. They reached the door. Still no words. Not from the guests, not from the staff. Only the second staffer with the clipboard tried to speak. A whisper, almost panicked. "We didn't mean..." But RM didn't stop walking, didn't nod, didn't spare a look. Because there was nothing left to clarify. The point had already been made, not by them, but by the room. They hadn't been yelled at, they hadn't been removed, but they'd been selected. And now, no one knew what to do with that. The door swung open, and behind them, the silence finally collapsed into whispers, half sentences, stares. Someone said, "I think that was them." Another replied, "Why did they have to go?" But no one answered, because the question was too close to the answer. Back inside, the room exhaled, not in relief, but in relapse. Like it had been holding its breath through a scene no one wanted to witness, and no one could forget. The manager retreated first, quietly, toward the hallway, toward nothing. No eye contact, no words. Just gone. The bartender started moving again, cleaning, pouring, pretending. A performance of normal, but the rhythm was off now. Glasses stacked too tightly, bottles tapped the counter a little too loud. Every sound echoed more than it should. The couple didn't touch their drinks. The woman stared straight ahead. The man said something low, an attempt at a joke, maybe, but her eyes didn't move. A guest near the far wall pulled out her phone. Screen dimmed. Screen brightened. She didn't record. Just stared at the empty chat window like it might know how to translate what she'd seen. That's what it was now. A story, not about what happened, but what had almost happened, and how close it had come, and how wrong it still felt. In the elevator, they hadn't spoken. Not Jin, not Yoongi, not Jungkook, not RM. There was nothing to say, because it wasn't anger, it wasn't insult. It was something quieter and harder to explain. A room full of strangers who watched 4 people being asked to leave a space they were already quietly inhabiting. And no one stopped it. Not because they agreed, but because they didn't know if they were allowed to disagree. Back downstairs, someone asked the bartender, "Why'd they have to go?" The bartender didn't answer, just wiped the same spot twice. Later that night, one of the guests told the story. Not loud, just enough for the group. "I was there. I saw them. They got asked to leave. No one yelled. No one argued. But you could feel it. Like, they weren't supposed to be seen there that way." And someone else nodded. And someone else said, "That's so weird." And someone else said, "Are you sure it was them?" But they were. And that was the part no one could figure out what to do with. Because they left. And everyone stayed. But no one felt like they belonged there anymore.